Hey guys, welcome back to Hands On channel. Today we're going to talk about some pretty sensitive topics here, and it's going to relate to all the riots and the looting and the burning down of many American cities around the country here, and some other sensitive things that we're going to get into. So if you have small children, I advise you to, get them out of the room or turn this off and watch it again later. And please watch it. I think it's important stuff that we need to all address, but I've had to write this down because there are so many different facets and, so many different things going on to consider that I wanted to try to get my thoughts out there. And hopefully the idea of this is to start a conversation with you guys about the things that are going on. Even if you disagree with everything I say in the following video, if you'll do it in a respectful way, come down in the comments. I invite you, please come down there and tell me how I'm wrong or what I'm missing here, because I think it's good for us to learn by communicating rather than burning down cities. So let's get right into this. I called this Liberty is Under Attack. So I'm going to start out with a Bible verse, Romans 12:17 through 21. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So, let's get right into this hard-hitting stuff here. On May 25th, 2020, a video surfaced that showed the disturbing arrest of George Floyd. While this issue is complex, I want to touch briefly on a few issues. If at some point evidence should suggest that Mr. Floyd was denied due process, that should infuriate every liberty-loving American. Every one of us should stand against excessive use of force by the police. It's disingenuous for us to ask for a protective agency to make arrests with zero force, but reasonable force needs to be established. Our society relies on the ability of the police to get suspected criminals to a jail or police custody without risk of execution. People who refuse to see the danger in this could become a victim of the same type of careless abuse in the future. To my mind, when determining if this threshold is passed, we need to investigate further than the viewing of a single video clip. All men are created equal, and we have a right to be treated like human beings, even if we are being detained or arrested. Gender, race, or any other label should not dictate how forceful or violent our arrest will be. Only our actions in that moment should determine what level of force will be used. Yes, the police are trained to meet force with like force, and in certain situations, even overwhelming force. Resisting arrest is always going to increase the chances of experiencing a higher level of force. Next up, people are innocent until proven guilty. It's a simple idea, but presumption of innocence is one of the most essential concepts of liberty. It's there to guarantee our status as free men until a trial determines otherwise. Simply put, without the concept of due process, liberty is non-existent. Anytime an arresting officer becomes the judge, jury, and executioner, we the people have a problem. At the point of arrest, it doesn't matter if Floyd was guilty or not. Police should never be allowed to use deadly force for a simple arrest. I'm not saying they did, but I am saying it needs to be determined. The situation seems especially callous when we can see the arresting officer look at the camera. But that fact alone made me question if a knee to the neck was a trained police tactic for this department. 8 minutes and 46 seconds is an awful long time to have a knee on your neck, under any circumstances. If neck restraint is an approved police arrest tactic, it's definitely time to review it. As an everyday citizen with little contact with law enforcement, I didn't know this was a standard tactic. If it had happened to me, I would have thought I was being attacked. Next up, we've got leftist-controlled media hype. This is a real problem. On the other side of the coin, we have the media's rush to judgment. They immediately deem the disturbing actions by arresting Officer Derek Chauvin as an act of racially motivated violence. Here are a few examples of the headlines. Racism, police brutality, and George Floyd's death. People across this country are enraged, and rightly so. Biden reacts to George Floyd's brutal death and calls it a reminder of systematic racism. Column: Minneapolis riots, George Floyd, Trump's vile tweet, and Chicago violence. White America refuses to look racism in the eye. Too often, when a white-on-black incident happens, the leftist politicians and the media assume it's racially motivated. While the situation certainly requires asking the question, was race a factor, how could the news possibly have learned that it was? Before we even had a chance to review what we know about Officer Chauvin, news cycles somehow had insight into the inner workings of his mind. Did Floyd and Chauvin know each other? Could they have just been enemies due to entirely different circumstances? Were either or both of them involved in any illegal activities that would have put them at odds with each other? While the video content of Floyd's arrest demands investigation on multiple fronts, it would be more factual to investigate, rather than report, racism as the primary motivation. Media outlets are failing us daily. They seek to inflame and rush to report. While we certainly do not want them to suppress inflammatory news, it shouldn't be presented in a one-sided manner with conclusions already drawn. In the old days, the media reported the who, what, where, when, and why of a story, and that was news. What evidence do we have that the severity of Floyd's arrest stems from racial motivations? Does it have racial implications? Certainly, but that's another concept, and the media certainly knows the difference. Gone are the days of vetting a story. Internet news has ushered in the era of breaking stories down to the minute and shock-worthy content. Facts be damned. Likes and shares are more important than facts and questions. When the media released the initial video, no internal police investigation had been done. No FBI or federal investigation had been done. No investigative journalism had been done. The media and the politicians pushed the racist narrative. Like a broken record, they play the race card prematurely and without confirmation, desensitizing many to real instances of racial hatred. Many news outlets accused all white people of latent, unrealized, systematic racism. Those in power have a saying, never let a crisis go to waste. The leftist media are opportunists. Yes, I'm saying the media and many politicians are using George Floyd's death to further their own political objectives, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. Our founding principles ensure a free press, but when journalistic principles are abandoned, I'm not sure that's what we really have. I can no longer refer to their agenda-driven dialogue as unbiased news, and this concerns me. We deserve better. We must demand better. The objective of the communist left. Riots, looting, arson, and violence rages in Democrat-controlled American cities. That is not a coincidence. Attorney General Barr says it's being orchestrated and coordinated by extreme leftist groups. The communist Antifa and BLM soldiers occupy those liberal cesspools. I haven't heard any of the Democrat politicians condemn the violence. Quite the opposite, in fact. They say this is an organic, justified civil uprising and it's all about equal justice. Equal justice does not leave new victims in its wake. To me, the obvious objective is anarchy and civil unrest, fomenting fear, anger, and rage among the populace so the Democrats and the media can blame it all on a president they despise. The communist Democrats don't care about compassion, racism, or equal justice in America. The real prize is the presidency. Joe Biden is undeniably one of the weakest Democrat nominees in modern times. He doesn't stand a chance against a strong economy, so they needed to break the system to level the playing field. First, they rolled out the China virus hoax, and we fell for it like fools. Many of us didn't even question the government as they removed our God-given rights, state by state. That alone was alarming to me. Remember when peaceful protesters were strongly criticized by the leftist propaganda news stream for standing up against unconstitutional lockdown orders? Liberal governors and mayors across the country worked in lockstep in what seemed to be a coordinated effort to keep America closed for business for as long as possible, breaking the economy. Meanwhile, judges and Attorney General Barr issued warnings of constitutional violations. I'm convinced this was all part of the Communist Democrat plan to steal the 2020 elections. Everything was working exactly like they had envisioned, except the American people began to question the COVID death numbers. Later, we found out many of the COVID deaths and initial estimated deaths had been greatly exaggerated by the media's 24-hour fear machine. President Trump mentioned a possible treatment, and the media and their comrades told people not to take it. If studies had not been completed, why would the media report it didn't work and that the side effects could possibly kill you? Protesting was being discouraged by the leftists, right up until they saw a chance to play the race card again. Last week, you would surely have gotten COVID if you protested against the lockdown orders. But now that the Democrats want to cause riots and chaos and civil unrest, not one mention of selfish protesters spreading COVID. It's like the riots cured the most deadly plague of all time, instantly. Amazing. I mean, we have witnessed a miracle. I wonder if it was the looting or the burning of the cities that killed the COVID. Seriously, where are all the news reports that rioters are putting us all at risk with their selfish actions? Once the riots subside, they will probably claim that the COVID numbers are off the charts again. You can't make this shit up. Once you understand the communist playbook and the language of the left, their plan to destroy America is plain to see. Next up, riots are being organized by the communist left. Attorney General Barr says, in many places it appears the violence is planned, organized, and driven by anarchist, leftist extremist groups, far left extremist groups using Antifa-like tactics. Here's another one. Pallets of bricks have been delivered to major cities across the USA. No sign of any construction nearby. Who delivered these bricks and who paid for them? Antifa warns on Twitter. Tonight we move into the residential areas. My question is, but why? That's a question the media is supposed to be asking. Of course, this will only add more fuel to the fire if they do that. The strategy of burning down liberal cities might work because the communists have ordered the police to stand down, but the suburbs are a different situation. The suburbs are owned by homeowners who aren't going to stand down and allow hate-filled groups of rioters to burn down their hopes and dreams. If Antifa and BLM keeps pushing, eventually someone is going to push back. That doesn't end well for any of us, so please listen carefully. We are all being used as political pawns. To me, it's undeniable, and it reeks of communist revolution. This is a multi-pronged psychological and physical assault on the American population, a direct attack on the American way of life and our liberty. We're in extreme times, and this can only end in two possible ways. 1. We continue on this path of destruction. We destroy each other and the country in the process. Or 2, we question everything with boldness and we break out of this communist Democrat revolution. We must prosecute all traitorous actions. Let's guarantee some equal justice by applying it to everyone, even politicians and the media. So now we've got some solutions and ideas here. So where do we go from here? How do we react in a time so full of schemes and agendas? I don't have all the answers, but I do know that I refuse to let race be the lens I use to view the world. I think we must demand our law enforcement agents honor their oath to the Constitution. Our news sources shouldn't be mouthpieces for political elite from any side, and our politicians should defend our rights, not limit them. We need more transparency, more balanced news, and less political posturing during these times of crisis. It's not too late. We can still come together as Americans and expose these instigators of chaos. Let justice be served for all Americans, regardless of skin color. So I'm going to leave the video here on some inspirational quotes that I found uplifting to my spirits here. The limitation of riots, moral questions aside, is that they cannot win, and their participants know it. Hence, rioting is not revolutionary, but reactionary, because it invites defeat. It involves an emotional catharsis, but it must be followed by a sense of futility. Next up, we must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid the power to forgive is devoid the power to love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. Never, never be afraid to do what's right, especially if the well-being of a person or an animal is at stake. Society's punishments are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our soul when we look the other way. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. All of those quotes were by Martin Luther King Jr. And while you guys are thinking about this stuff, I want you to ask yourself, what happened to that spirit there that Martin Luther King Jr. had? Judge a man by the content of his character, not the color of his skin. We all need to get back to that, guys. If you want to learn more about this topic, please visit Stefan Molyneux's YouTube channel. He's one of the very few people that really gets it these days. I mean, he seems to be, from my perspective, he seems to be trying to use logic and reason to sort all this stuff out rather than jumping to conclusions. And I really have, he's got a great channel over there. Tell him the Hands-On channel sent you if you don't mind. Check him out, give him thumbs up, support his channel. For constitutional knowledge, please visit Chris Ann Hall, JD, on YouTube. She is a constitutional attorney and has many videos about your rights and what they mean legally. So, guys, I appreciate you tuning in and giving this video a chance. And again, even if you disagree with every single thing I've said, if you'll do it in a respectful way, I would love to start a dialogue, because I think that's how we're going to solve our problems, is by using love and compassion and reaching out to each other and trying to connect with each other, maybe on a level that we haven't done in many, many years, because, you know, most of us are afraid to really get out of our own shell, and we need to break out of that. We need to learn about our people in our country, interact with them, love them, you know, treat them as equals, and regardless of all this other stuff, race and sex and skin color and all this stuff. So again, it may not have seemed like it from some of the stuff I said, but I swear to you, this video, from my perspective, comes from a position of care and love, because I don't want to see the United States be destroyed by communists. Guys, appreciate you tuning in. I stand for liberty, and I hope you do too. We'll see you next time.